Welcome back, everybody, to Plato's Academy. I want to continue some thoughts I had with my bro last time. I really enjoyed talking to him about Dante and education. We didn't even get into the Republic. We didn't even finish Dante. I mean, it was an incredible vision. And so I want to continue that thought. And I want to ask you some more questions, bro, and sort of get into, again, the theme of my interest is education, why you think Republic and Dante are so crucial to education, especially Catholic and high school education. And so what we said last time, just to review quickly, was we were talking about the creative imagination. The moral, it's a part of human beings.
Yeah, we never quite defined that. I was
got
too
it.
busy explaining
It's okay.
Dante.
I think we got what I wanted out of it, which was there's a part of humanity, a power that we have, a potential to actualize. And the education is the process by which we actualize our humanity. Yeah. Right. And so we're actualizing
unlocks our creativity, unlocks our potential.
And the creative imagination is you love the idea of vision. Right. And so I'm a philosopher. I think of like the way in which you conceptualize things. There's a framework and order and certain priority of images and themes, right, in which to structure and interpret world history, ourselves, nature, everything. And that framework gives you kind of an imaginative projection. Yeah. Right.
Which is part of intellecting.
That's right. And so it's not part of like the just physical images when we say imagination. That's why I like the idea of conception.
Yeah, that's why I like the idea of vision.
Yes. So sometimes
it's connected to intellecting, which is connected to reasoning, which is not just calculating like the modern mind.
Right. And so I actually use the phrase to my students. This didn't occur to me in the last episode I was talking to you about this, of the conceptual imagination. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. So you liked vision, and then you said how Dante gives us this vision and all these images, and how you kind of gave us a little history.
His journey is our journey.
Yeah, he took the quest literature and the courtly love literature, brought those together, and he has this
with
incredible
Virgil and the epic tradition.
It is an epic, right?
Yeah.
And it's like this massive quest journey, right, from where we're at now in life, wherever we are in the middle of life, right, to God, right, to our ultimate destiny. And you were giving me lots of examples. It was so fascinating. But what I noticed was a parallel with a work that I love in philosophy by Bonaventure, right, called Journey of the Mind to God. And Bonaventure has a similar journey and quest, right, an order, right, in which in his mind it's a human being now living in life, right? So how they can develop a discipline of contemplation now. Right, so it's not an afterlife sort of thing like Dante, but it's a similar progression.
Although Dante wasn't dead.
Yeah,
it was not. He was still alive. Yeah, when he went on this journey.
Yes,
weirdly.
Okay,
so he wasn't dead.
Right,
because there's several times in the journey.
So there's levels of the allegory.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the individual soul who is dead in a certain way, but it's also him now thinking through this.
Yes, it's on Earth. Yes, and in a letter he wrote to Congrande.
So it's like he's dreaming about it or something.
Yeah, or it's a vision he had that he just wrote down.
Yeah.
You know, in this letter he says that it can be taken in more than one sense.
Yes.
And first of all, there's a political prophecy.
Yes.
He's saying something about church and state and that stuff.
Yeah.
I know those words need to be unpacked, but he's saying stuff about the relationship between the temporal and the spiritual.
Yeah.
He had views on that. Actually, they weren't quite accurate. Yeah. But he did have views on that.
Yeah.
It's also an allegory of each soul,
yes.
an individual on a journey to God.
Yeah.
Right. And also it says a lot about love and the Christian vision.
In a certain way, it represents all souls. So it's a story of humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So anyway,
that's great. So Bonaventure does the same thing, right? And he talks about how in the first stage, we contemplate God. We know God through, right, the created order that he has. And he's revealed in his artwork, right? And we can know God and contemplate God in that, right? But then we go to the next level, which is ourselves, right? We're an image of God because we're memory, intellect, and will. Our soul is those three powers, like a trinity. So using Augustine's notion, right, of we're the exact image of God. Our three powers are one soul, right? The three persons are one being.
Yeah.
And that when we think about that and how those powers work, those powers include, he called memoria. That's consciousness. That's to me includes what I just called the conceptual imagination. So it's a fundamental power of our very selves. And for Bonaventure, memoria or consciousness or conceptual imagination, if you will, is like the fundamental one. It's comparable to the Father, the unbegotten source, right? The creative source of everything and the really source of the order in the Trinity. Yeah. And then once we start thinking actively about those concepts and forming propositions and judgments and comparing and dividing things and, coming up with more understanding, that's another process above the creative imagination, right? And then we have, the will, the love itself. And those are all, and when we think about that, we're understanding God's inner nature by comparing it to our image. And then that's one level of contemplation. And at that point in the journey of the mind of God, which has chapters, right? In the very middle of it, right? In chapter 4, in the middle is where, so there's 3 and then 4 and then 3 more, right? And so in the very middle, you have Christ himself, right? The sort of hinge, right? Because he is God and he is man. And then he describes this whole process of hierarchization, how the soul becomes hierarchized through, like you're talking about with in heaven.
Yeah, like raised
up through. So it's like the soul is like, think of like a piece of cloth on a table, right? And I grab it like right here, and the cloth represents your soul, and you sort of slowly pull it up like this. It's like getting pointier, higher, right? And he says that God comes down and pulls us up through all the hierarchy of angels, and they're all ministering to us, right? As we're going up closer into the very essence of God.
Yeah.
And that's the story of the sanctifying grace.
Yeah.
We talked about Adam in a previous episode, like when he's in the fall, like God still has that whole process to bring him through, right? By grace, essentially, absolutely, essentially supernatural grace.
Yeah.
And so really cool. I see the same image. And then once we get sort of in our contemplative habits, this is representing our contemplative habits, how to know God, how to practice the presence of God. We talked about prayer. This is how to do it for Bonaventure. It's part of spiritual discipline. It's not a philosophical exercise, right? It's a description of the way in which we can know our God personally. And so then the third stage is where we go above our mind, what he says, right?
He goes past it.
Yeah. And so then we can think about, you might say, God's essence. And so we use all these abstract terms to describe him, but what we're doing is we're envisioning, right, through intuition, right, God's own being. We see it in the transcendentals, being, truth, goodness, beauty. We see God in it's a concrete reality. Right? We call it a transcendental reality. It's not ideal. It's not like abstractions. It's a concrete reality. We feel it, right? We know it. We interact with it. God is present through those transcendentals. And so then we're starting to think about the essence of God through those transcendentals directly. And then we go one step further, right, into the very heart, the psychology, inner psychology of God, the Trinitarian persons. And then we know more about God by that. We're thinking about love itself. And then he talks about how we go above that and our mind is now at rest. It can't go any further, right? And now we're like where mystics can be, like St. Francis, right? And so that's his kind of story. And I was just like in my mind comparing all the different levels. I'm sure scholars and other people have done that. I've not researched. I'd like to see the direct comparisons
with
between,
Dante and Bonaventure. I don't know. That's really cool. I'm sure. I mean, it sounds very. I mean, I'm thinking it's definitely. It's medieval.
I'm pretty sure.
It's very medieval because it's so hierarchical, and the whole way they thought the universe and the cosmos and God, and that makes sense.
Yes.
If they weren't directly connected, they're connected because they lived in the same century, basically.
My guess is that they're somehow directly connected. I don't know history enough, but I think that he was a third order Franciscan. Even though he loved St. Thomas, he was a third order Franciscan, right? If I remember right. So,
Dante?
Yes.
I'm not sure. That's a good question.
No, I'm pretty sure he was. So. Anyways, we can check on that fact later. Anyway, I just wanted to compare that. That's something that I really wanted to say the last time, but we ran out of time. So I love that connection, and I'd love to talk about the journey of the mind to God sometime. You can interview me about that one.
Yeah, that's.
But now get me to the Republic, right? Yeah. Unless you have anything more to say about Dante.
No, the main thing about Dante is I heard this advice from I think it was David Allen White. Can't remember, but he said if you do read the Divine Comedy, you have to make it all the way to the end.
I know. That's what I haven't done.
And because most of us read Inferno and we stop. And I heard this from the great courses have a really great two teachers that teach on Dante.
Okay.
They do a really nice job. I'd highly recommend that to anybody.
Okay. What's it called?
Well, just the great courses and
Dante.
Dante.
Yeah. Through my Audible, I can look it up.
Yeah, you can do it on Audible.
My library has an app thing that I can get free stuff.
I have the Wondrium app. Which is the Great Courses app. The school has it.
Okay.
So I use that.
Okay.
But anyway, they said that when they have taught Dante to college students, to people in prisons, because they did like prison education, and they've done it at monasteries or like church groups.
Yeah.
And they said they've asked them, what's your favorite realm? And the students invariably are hell. They like that one the best. And the people in the prison like Purgatorio the best.
Yeah.
And the people in convents or abbeys or churches that are like thinkers like Paradiso the best.